Hi and welcome to Thete Gaming, and in this video, before we go all 40k tomorrow, I'd like to discuss a couple of newly revealed rules details for the heroes in the new 3rd edition Age of Sigmar Dominion set, specifically for the Kruleboyz. That of the mounted Kruleboyz hero and the wizard, the shaman. Both seem to have stats or rules that don't, to me, really seem to fit with what you'd expect of orcs, or Orruks, if you insist. The impressive mounted hero in the Dominion box. The killer boss on Great Gnashtooth, for example. So first of all, it's quite a beefy character. For the size of it, you wouldn't really think it's a 10 wound thing, but it is, and it's classed as a monster, apparently, according to the blurb anyway. But the mount has better stats than the rider, which can happen. Usually it would happen when you've got like a wizard on a monster or something like that, but it can, I suppose, happen. But it's all 3s to hit. And I thought, well, because for the mount, and the rider is 3s to hit, 3s to wound, I think it's -1 rend and 2 damage. And it's 4 attacks. For the monster mount, it's also 4 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, -2 rend, 2 damage. So the rend is a bit better, it makes it a bit better than rider. And you get, well, the 3s to wound, for Orruks, absolutely. And obviously, for any sort of beefy mount, of course you'd expect it to be 3s to wound. It's really beefy, even 2s to wound. And the 3s to hit with the killer boss itself, you know, if they represent the biggest type of boss, that's also fine. But 3s to hit for a monster mount, that's not at all usual. You see it does exist, but it's not really usual, especially for a destruction type mount. But it's not a balance issue. I'm not poking at a balance issue here, because if the points cost represents the value of the unit, it's all fine as far as I'm concerned, unlike the perplexing double turn. But does it make sense for Orruks? Because when they first announced the army and said that they could be made into a strong shooting army, for example, see, I was intrigued, but also skeptical. Because how to make Orruks good at shooting? Because normally you might think, okay, so if you had to design a unit and say, make this good at shooting, you'd think, okay, good chance to hit and wound then. Well, wound, sure, but Orruks having a good chance to hit with a bow? Not sure that sounds plausible. The next option is, okay, really bad at hitting stuff, but high rate of fire. So you have multiple attacks with the missile weapons, 2 or 3 attacks. But that would represent the agility of the archers reloading quickly. Absolutely makes sense for elves, but Orruks, no. So we all know that Kruleboyz now get a rule where 6s to hit, and it doesn't specify what, so we'll assume in close combat as well as shooting. 6s to hit, stop the sequence and automatically do mortal wounds equal to the damage value of the weapon. It's a little bit like Ethereals in Nighthaunt, only if it's a weapon that does 2 damage, it'll do 2 mortal wounds, 3 damage, and so on. And that's absolutely fine. And it's perfectly plausible in terms of the narrative as it represents their poison. Although that must also mean that they poison the claws of their mounts. Maybe they're naturally poisoned. Doesn't matter. It makes sense. That's fine. Narratively, okay with that. And that would certainly help give their shooting some extra potency. But not to the point where you'd class it as strong, particularly if the chance to hit is the typical Orruk chance to hit, which is like a 5. So now that I'm seeing a brutish mount being given 3s to hit, I'm also now wondering, so is this how you're going to make them good at shooting? Are their archers going to be given a decent chance to hit as well? And just as with the mounted hero, again, it's not a case of complaining about balance. It might well be perfectly balanced. I suspect it's not going to be, but it might be. No reason to suppose it would be unbalanced right now, though I'm going to do something when I get onto the wizard. I may actually question that. But does it make sense? Because don't get me wrong, I'll say time and again, balance is more important. If you've got a bit of a quandary with a rule, and it's between being cool and being balanced, for matched play, doesn't matter about open play or even narrative play, but for match play must be balanced. Takes priority. Hence my disdain of the double turn. I'll never stop moaning about that. But if you're not going to design an army where its rules make sense for the army character, and again, I'm not saying that is definitely not the case based on 2 models, but based on the only 2 models I've seen stuff on, that's a theme I'm seeing. The question is, why have so many armies? And I know from their point of view, they want to sell more models, and it's easier to do that with more armies. But if they were scratching around for a new army to bring out, and it was like, oh, we've done everything. They haven't done everything. There's an obvious one. And anyone who's been playing Warhammer for a long time knows what the obvious one is. For about 20 years, in fact, it's what people have been calling for. Chaos Dwarfs. Yes, I know Forge World had a pop, and I would have by now got myself around to it, but models just kept being discontinued, and now the whole lot has. In fact, the Forge World range in general seems to have been discontinued from Age of Sigmar. Can't get the models. It had a very limited set of rules anyway. People have been banging on about the Chaos Dwarfs since 6th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle. They gave them rules in Ravening Hordes and they never got an army book. They could have even made them Destruction. It didn't have to be Chaos. They obviously changed the name. They changed the name for Forge World anyway. They could have themed it around a Destruction army. That would have made perfect sense. After all, they'd be starting from the drawing board with them anyway. It would just thematically be like the Chaos Dwarfs of old. All sorts you could have done with that. It would have made it very distinctive, very unique. I mean, we haven't got an army like that in Age of Sigmar. But no, they went for more greenskins, which implies that they had an idea for it. But did they? I just hope they didn't force the issue so much that in the absence of any real inspiration, and with a bit of a dose of power creep thrown in, they end up creating an army that is strong and will appeal to players who want to spend their money on the latest flavour of the month, but ends up with a disconnect between lore and gameplay. And so far you may think, okay, so I'm probably making too much out of a single mount happening to have 3s to hit, but that's just the eyebrow raising stat. It's the sort of thing you could go, well, it looks odd, but do you know what? When I see all the units together, and if that's a bit of an aberration, just think, well, it's a particularly, agile mount then, isn't it? You could get away with that. What's really odd is the new wizard, because I don't really see, even if I see the whole rest of the rules for the army, getting away from this one. The Swamp Caller Shaman has a spell called Summon Boggy Mist. Casting value of 7, which what it does is you add -1 to charge for enemy, or anything that's not a Kruleboyz Orruks. It could actually include non-Kruleboyz allies. And +1 to charge for friendly Kruleboyz Orruks. And that's not pick a friendly unit within a certain range and it gets +1 to the charge, and pick an enemy unit within a certain range and you get -1 to the charge. That's all of your army, barring allies, getting +1 to the charge, and all enemy units, bar none, getting -1. And not an aura, not within 12 inches or 18 inches or even 24 inches, the entire battlefield. Sure, that battlefield is going to be a bit smaller soon, but still, that's the sort of thing you would query. If you gave that to Teclis or Lord Croak, you might think, seems a bit much. That it's been given to a greenskin shaman is spectacular. It doesn't even seem to be a huge lore character from what, I haven't read the whole thing. It doesn't seem to be a named character, just a bog standard one, if you'll pardon the expression. Just the scope of the spell, affecting all units on the battlefield, every single one. Every single one. Because remember, even units in your own army, if they're not Kruleboyz, if they don't have the Kruleboyz keyword, they've got the -1 to charge as well. You can actually hamper your own side. And it's everything in yours and your opponent's army, as well as unlimited range. But these are just a couple of snippets. Maybe the full army will be an absolute corker, and maybe it will be my first Destruction army. I certainly need to sort one out for myself. I would just say that my first impressions are making me increasingly worried that this is a project that may not have been thought through. But those are my thoughts anyway. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button and subscribe to see more content. And until next time, I'll see you later.